Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ruck Up Buttercup. It's just me and Ashley hanging out today, so we have a girl chat with you guys. But we have a topic that I know we've talked about it on here before, but
Yeah.
doesn't really get talked about enough at all. I think when we were younger, it was talked about more like in our training when you were like joined the military or became a military spouse, but is how to behave not just social media, but social media specifically as far as OPSEC, PERSEC, and just knowing what is going being put out there, like because it affects your military member's career definitely. So we're just going to kind of get into that and hopefully give you guys some advice on how to navigate. I guess that's sort of
Yeah.
navigate using social media.
Because I feel like every single one of us has done something that has probably at one point jeopardized OBSEC or PERSEC or may have gone on a tangent or something like that on any platform. And so once it's out there on those platforms, it's out there. Let's talk about spouse Facebook groups first. Let's dive into that one first, because even though we go into those groups thinking it's like a safe space, and I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening, it's not necessarily a safe space. Like, we have so many people who take this opportunity to just be really mean. Like the audacity of people that I see sometimes, I'm just like, what is wrong? Like, what is going on in your life right now that is making it okay for you to degrade, belittle, tear down a fellow military spouse? But I also feel like I've noticed a trend lately. I don't know if you've noticed this. I'm sure you have, but at least in the last 4 years, at least, where the amount of posts I see of like, well, my soldier did this, like, how can I get him in trouble? Like, just airing all of your business into a group of complete strangers. And like, it'd be different, like where you would say, hey, like, I need recommendations for a divorce lawyer, or I need recommendations for this. But instead, like, it is full blown, like,
The full drama of
full
exactly what's
drama. And,
happening.
you
Yeah.
know, I get it. Like, I can use a good dose of drama every once in a while, but I feel like those groups get such a bad reputation because of it, because all you see is just hate on top of hate on
Well,
top of hate.
and I think the new trend is, and it's been over the last couple of years where they started allowing you to post anonymously, is that people post anonymously these trashy things like this, but they don't realize, as an admin of a group, I can see who posted it.
Yeah.
Like, there's still somebody who knows because they have to kind of know in case there's like a police situation, there has to be some information out there. But yes, it's anonymous to the group, but not always to the admin. So like you're putting a lot of faith in the admin not to gossip about it and stuff too. You're not hiding behind what you think is anonymous particularly. So like, yeah, sure, you're anonymous, and to the general population that's what it looks like. But if that person who is running the account really wants to get your spouse in trouble or knows your spouse, like heaven forbid,
Right?
is like commander's wife,
Like,
that's
that's
gonna get
that's a huge, that what you just said is a huge point. Those groups are not just for E1, E2, E3, E4 baby soldier families. There are people in there all the way up, all the way
Mhm.
up. And, I I mean, I don't know, like, seasoned spouse, like, it's so hard for me to explain this, because I'm a firm believer that, like, a spouse doesn't wear their service
You're
member's
right.
rank,
Yeah.
and that I can personally be friends with any person, but I know that I can only say certain things around certain people. Like, I was really, really good friends with our battalion commander.
Yeah.
My husband is nowhere near that rank, and so I knew that, like, if I had any frustrations regarding what was happening at work, I couldn't necessarily relay it to her. Now, I could, like, we were close enough that I could relay, like, a little bit of frustration, but at the same time, like, I knew where my
Very like,
boundaries went.
yeah, like
But
watching that line.
she
Yeah.
was the same way, though. She's like, hey, like, that was one of the first things she goes, hey, that's my husband's job. Like, I'm here to support you. And we had a great relationship, and it's been that was by far one of my favorite experiences as a military spouse, in terms of, like, we worked together really well on the FRG. Her and the command sergeant major's wife, like, I absolutely adored them. And I can't say that for every spouse I've ever met, because there are spouses out
There's so
there
many people.
who
Yeah.
do think they wear their husband's rank, and who do come off as like, sorry, I can't be friends with you. And we're not here for that. Obviously, you guys, if you've been listening to us for a long time, we love on everybody, no matter
Yeah,
rank.
I love when you meet a group of spouses and you don't really know their rank
Yeah,
until later.
yeah.
So like that was at our first duty station in Hawaii. I obviously we were like specialists at that point, like tiny babies, right? 19-year-old. And that FRG was so well founded and put it together that not only our unit, but like within the entire battalion,
Mhm.
that we hung out, like you were saying, with the commanders' wives. We hung out with all these people and we did all these events together. And though you knew that that's who
Mhm.
they were with, it didn't feel like that. Like we'd
Yeah.
go to movies and we do these things together, and but you did know, like you did
Well,
know that, like especially when it's your related to your
yeah.
job, that you need
And
the right.
it's really different when it's a spouse within your husband, when or your spouse, and your spouse's
Yeah,
direct line of leadership. And so it can be very different, which is why we pretty much created Deployed Love to begin with, was because we knew there were people who needed that connection, who needed that community
outside of their FRG.
outside of that, because they're like, I really don't want to connect with the military families because I don't want to have that. And
Yeah,
I totally get it, y'all. I get it. Like having, once Jeremy got to the first sergeant position, I knew that I had to personally watch what I was saying around the people that I had already been friends with who were under my husband, just because I was just like, they can come tell me things and I'd be like, I make that choice of, do I go tell Jeremy, hey, this is going on? Or do I go and just be like, well, it's the job. And I think that's a huge thing. The military changes so often, Sabrina just like at the beginning said what we learned growing up is not the same, and especially in the last 4 years, like OBSEC in general, the last 4 years has blown my little mind.
I don't know, because obviously we are seasoned beyond that, but I don't think that they're really getting that information
Yeah,
from the Army
I,
at all.
if they don't go to deployment briefs and stuff like that, they're not. But the problem is whereas like, okay, so my husband's been in for over 15 years now, and he deployed in the mid to late 2000s, so during the height of war, still really really active in things, and OBSEC was super freaking important. If there was a spouse that said, oh my god, my husband comes home tomorrow, blocked. It was a blackout. They were delayed for weeks, months.
It
It
was
could have been
so
like anything, like
annoying.
like
Yeah.
it happened. And so for our new spouses that are joining the military, they don't see that, because like for instance, when we had those rapid activations in the early, like in 2020, 2000 or 2020, 2021 timeframe, 2022, OBSEC was out the fucking window. I'm sorry for those who are listening, but the news was reporting things before it even came down the appropriate channels to military families.
Mhm.
And as someone who husband was in the middle of that, and as a seasoned spouse, I was just like, what is happening? Oh my God, my husband's like plane is going to be targeted, because like it has happened in the past. And so when people talk about OBSEC, especially those people are like, this violates OBSEC, even though the news is saying something, doesn't mean that you should be saying it, because it still could have consequences, not on just you but your spouse as well, because they could just be like, hey, like, have you not had that conversation with your spouse about what OBSEC is? Because of you, they're going to not come, we are going to be delayed. And I guarantee you that every soldier is going to know whose wife caused the delay. I've seen it
Yeah.
happen. I'm straight up, when Jeremy was deployed, was it Iraq? I think it was when he was deployed to Iraq. We had a spouse who did it, and they were delayed, and everybody knew who it was.
Oh, sure.
And she was met with not so nice comments and things like that. And but it was genuinely I didn't know. But it doesn't just apply to spouses too. You need to tell your family. Like tell your mama, because mamas are also the worst offenders. Your dad, or actually any family member who's not been told, like, don't share this, like, don't share this information with anyone, because it could affect us coming home. It could affect, it can affect so many different things, y'all.
We've always kind of kept, so like, you only really receive it as a spouse that info right away. So we always kind of just gave it like a 2-day delay to our parents and stuff,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, he'll be home already. Wills will be down on ground, so it doesn't matter at that point. And we'll be like, oh, look, he's home. Because I just know my parents and his parents are that way. Like they post everything. They're very personal on their social media, which is.
And I think I have a really different, like, because my parents
Are military.
are military. And so they know like the rules and things like, and but I also was like raised with like we don't text the information. I call like with the details, like, hey, you know, like, is he here yet? No. Like, I'd respond to things like that. But like with like time and date and things like that, it was like, hey, got the information, here it is. I will keep you up to date on more. And that way, like if they were talking, like, you know, if hacks or anything like that happen, which, you know, I don't know anything about that. I've not done research or anything about like how people can hack phones and emails. I mean, I've been hacked personally on Facebook, so I do know that it is possible, but you
Yeah.
know, it's one of those things where, you know, the whole TikTok thing right now, like why is TikTok being banned? You know, can the Chinese government see what's on our phones? And I'm kind of like, I have nothing on my phone other than
Yeah.
other than knowing that I am a military spouse. I mean, obviously like that is portrayed in a lot of all of my social media platforms because that is my what we do. Like, you know, we want to be a support system and things like that. But, you know, there are people out there whose sole focus is to, you know, target families and target, I mean, I as a military family have been targeted. Like because we were military, we were stationed overseas. I think we've talked about this on a past podcast
Mhm.
before. We were targeted. We were followed for hours. Coming back from a trip from Paris. I think it was Paris. No, it was the Netherlands. And so it does happen. And we're not just, I feel like sometimes we just talk to talk and like we give our recommendations, but like genuinely these things do happen. And you may know someone that this happened to, like whether they've shared that information with you or not. So I definitely feel like OBSEC, regardless if the news is sharing the information, doesn't mean you need to share it. And never, 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 never. Oh my gosh, I think this is like something we have to talk about. Do not talk to news stations.
Yeah, that's definitely was the 2020. You were talking about how
Oh
crazy
my
that
gosh.
was. And like it didn't directly affect me because my husband, though he was dealing with this situation at work, could do it from Liberty. But I was at the time, you know, the executive director for Deployed Love, and the insanity that me and Ashley were having to deal with on the back end of all these messages, the news stations reaching out, and then watching spouses go to their church and be on the news and tell them, hey, this is my church, this is when my husband leaves, and just like giving all this information was just like, these people can see your face, you realize that. Like it may be one thing in a news article where they don't know who you are, but it's a whole other thing when your whole face is on here. You told him what battalion your husband's in, you told him he's leaving today. Like you just put yourself in this situation where anybody who watched that news knows you're alone for the next X
Yeah,
amount of
and
time.
that's just
Nobody knew when they were coming back. Yeah.
and that, you know, that goes into PERSEC. I mean, on top of you already violating OBSEC like rules and stuff like that. Like if you get approach to talk to someone on the news station, it is always a good idea to contact the oh my gosh, my brain's not like
Or
the
Dean or something.
communication officer for your installation. And sometimes they're gonna be like, yeah, no, like that's fine, you guys can go do it. And other times they're gonna like, hey, no, this is a really delicate situation. Yeah, we see that it's being aired on the news already, but like I mean, from the perspective of a service member who was there and as a family who was going through this, there was no information. There was no information other than like, hey, we're going. And so much that was relayed through the news was false. And again, I'm a firm believer you cannot take everything that you hear on the news and just believe it, because like Jeremy even says like they were watching the news coverage while there and they were just like, that's not
Not
true.
what's happening.
And
And it
so
is funny because that's where OPSEC does really actually happen inside of the government is they don't give that information to the news station. So what you're seeing is what the news station assumes or what the little leaks that they've had, little
yeah.
tiny things. They don't have the actual information because the
Well,
government does have OPSEC where they're not going to put out
Well, and
that
that's the thing,
information.
and I think that's where the last 4 years have been so drastic with OPSEC is because the news stations were getting a lot of this information directly from the government. Like these were memos directly from some department saying, "Yep, no, we're going," and they wanted them to know that we're coming in. And so, but as a military family, it's been drilled into us that that was a big no-no, and so a lot of families took that as, well, if our own government isn't going to respect the OBSEC regulations, then why should we? And then I think it just kind of just snowballed out of effect, and people are just like, well, they did it, so now I can do it. But like, that was a situation that hasn't happened in so long. So, now that that's kind of off the table, like you have to go back to like not sharing that. But then also, like you just said, like the Persac, like
Yeah, so the trend that I've
sharing
seen a
your
lot,
information.
so we're on TikTok. I mean, probably a lot of
Yep.
you have found us from TikTok, but that I notice a lot when I'm going through and kind of just watching videos is not particularly putting the date on their thing, but the countdown. And it's like, if you
Yep.
know how to count, you're getting the date from that. And it's not even always the person who's posting the actual content.
Yeah.
It's in the comments. It'll be like, oh, mine comes home in 20 days. Mine comes home. There's a whole list of spouses that you could just get right off of TikTok because it's all public
And
knowledge and know that they're alone, know that
yeah.
they have kids, know that they, all these things. And you're just putting that out on this huge public social media platform.
Yeah, yep, yep. Well, and I think that is one of those things where like, we get it. Like it's so exciting when your service member gets to come home and it's exciting to have those countdowns. I always try to keep the countdowns just to our family. I've shown like what our countdowns look like, but I don't think I've ever shown like it during the
Absolutely.
process. Like, hey, this is what we're doing for our countdown this time. Or, hey, this is something that I recommend for a deployment type of thing. But like I said, I think we've probably done something that has like
Oh,
put
yeah.
ourselves at a risk of being targeted and whatnot. But I think it's so important to have a community because if you have that outside community, you won't be necessarily, you just won't feel like you would run
You're
to
not have to
complete
put it out
strangers
there.
saying mine comes home in this many days. And again, we want to share the excitement because it is really exciting. It's really exciting to be reunited with your service member, whether it's after a 2-week deployment, a 4-month deployment, a 12-month deployment, no matter the time frame, it's always exciting. But you're more likely to get in a heated argument with your significant other if you violate those obsecs because it will just come back to them. Like they will find out they'll find out because even if like say like your name isn't your name on Facebook, someone knows who you are and they're going and I don't care what people say, those boys talk like no other about anything and everything. So someone will know who and they will find out who it is. And then like I said, you're just putting yourself up for not only getting your service member in trouble, but then also kind of just being like the target of just not so nice comments. And, obviously try to have grace with people because, like I said, I don't think a lot of people know about this. I don't think a lot of people are trained or are given like really details of what could happen because it's
Just not what
different.
they do
It's so
anymore. Yeah.
different right now. Well, you have Fort Liberty, whose units are constantly on an IRF rotation, so they're rapidly deploying. They're not on a scheduled deployment, but you have other groups around the country who are on regular deployments, and so it is very different.
It comes down to we've talked about it a lot recently is that the FRGs don't look the same. They're
Mm-mm.
not the community like going out and hanging out kind of aspect that we grew up
No,
with.
most of them are back to soldier level.
Yeah, so they maybe the spouses aren't involved. The spouses are not going to meetings because it's weird, it's being run by the military. It doesn't feel like it's a spouse place anymore. And so you kind of get to this point where maybe they don't have that information because they didn't want to go to the FRG
Mhm.
meetings, which are basically just I don't even know what they're family
I'm
meetings, but
they're
yeah,
just
for the spouses, the soldier spouse now.
yeah, I don't care if you like FRG, if you don't want to be involved with your service members unit, whatever. If you have a deployment coming up, attend
Go to
the
those at least.
FRG meeting. Older and said because at least for me, Jeremy never brought me home the information ever. Like he just assumed I would either know what it was or it wasn't important. But
But when
thinking
deployments come up, they're just so busy too. They have
yeah,
so many things on their plate to prepare for that deployment
yep.
that sometimes bringing home that information
But I mean, like that
isn't always the first
information,
thing.
the important information that you can get from those meetings are who to contact if something happens. Like,
Mhm.
who is your rear D? You know, if there is an FRG, like their information. So that way, if something happens, they're gonna be able to like expedite. I mean, from at least myself, like I have like not only my husband as a connection, but like I've always got a really good working relationship with everyone that's in the chain command. So that would be like, hey, like this is an issue. We need to have this fixed. And that's just one of my things as a military family advocate. Like I want to make sure families are taken care of because if they're taken care of, then the service members can do their job as well. And so having having that information, but also all of the resources that are out there that are specifically for deployed families that you may not know about unless you go to one of these the meetings.
Yeah, I think at the very least, if you're going to attend anything for the FRG,
The
it
de-
has to be this deployment briefs. You have to go. We've been there. You know, I have sat on the side of the tables and stuff, and it's shocking how few spouses show up to these things. And there are resource tables. They have a huge, you know, they talk about
and I learn
everything that they're
something
going to
new
be
every
expecting.
time. I learned about a new resource every single time. I kid you guys not. Like every single time I've gone to a deployment briefing, I'm like, I didn't, or there's a resource that I know about, but then they talk about a different thing that they offer that I didn't know about. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, that would be so great to utilize during this deployment. And it's not even just like, like childcare. Like, there are so many things that are offered to military families during deployment that just make the spouse's life a little bit easier. And so I highly suggest that you guys go and at least attend that meeting. It doesn't
Because
mean that you're
because
getting
those meetings,
involved.
well, in those meetings, they're going to show you who is Rear D. Here's the 3 people who you can talk to Rear D. So
Yep.
if your house catches on fire, you know, something
Anything
who can you
crazy.
contact
You go into a
inside the unit.
hospital. I mean, yes, you can
Yeah.
send, like, yes, you like have the Red Cross like option,
But you
but
kind
then
of still have to go through
but
Rear
you
D.
still
They have to know who they are.
yeah, a lot of times it's faster to go through Rear D saying, hey, like I'm heading to the hospital. Like, can you let my husband know? Especially like if they're on like a, like that person doesn't have, all of our last rapid deployments. My husband didn't have his phone. Now he did have
Mhm.
his government phone because of his position, so he did have that. So, but no one else had any devices, no computers, no iPads, no phones. So there wasn't a lot of communication. So the only way to get a message to someone was through the chain of command. And whether that was through your FRG leader because they were the commander's wife or the first sergeant's wife, and those two individuals have a government phone with them, or you're going through Rear D and then they're going through the proper channels. And so it's one of those things where you just have to take a moment and say, this is important. I need to make sure I have all of the information. So in case something goes completely sideways, even if
Yeah.
it's not sideways and you just need that person, hey, like we had to go to the hospital today because Junior broke his arm. And then just to get them the message saying like, hey, keeping you in the form, like in the loop. But like Red Cross doesn't always work, and it doesn't always work quickly.
Quickly.
So
It's the big thing is Red
having
Cross
yeah,
usually has a pretty good delay on it. And
yeah,
so being able to just reach out to Rear D and be
like
like, hey,
yeah,
can you relay this
I've
message?
I've personally been able to get messages to soldiers in like almost triple the amount of time faster than them getting through the Red Cross.
Yeah.
I've been able to, and then on top of that, like if you have a good, like just a good open communication with your FRG, I've been also able to get information to spouses before it came down the proper channels. Now I am a proper channel, but like for instance, we had a soldier who got injured. The spouse was notified. She called me. A soldier was assigned to keep the spouse up to date on the progress of like transportation, and he definitely fucking did not do that. And so she's like, hey, I haven't heard anything. Like, have you heard? And I was like, are you absolutely kidding me? Like, boy, oh boy, did I lay into the leadership after that one. And it was, and they're like, you're right, Miss Brown. Like, this is absolutely unacceptable. Like that this spouse did not, like, he was supposed to be like, hey, we landed. We're getting on this plane. Hey, we landed. We got a plane. His excuse was, my phone died. And we're all like, you shouldn't have let your phone die.
Yeah.
Like that was your responsibility to make sure that this service member spouse was kept informed of her service member who was injured. And so, but that's like kind of like the perks of being like, at least like, hey, this is my correct email. This is my correct phone number. This is where I will be at if you like go somewhere else. Cause the amount of times we've had where I've seen wrong phone numbers, I've seen wrong email addresses, I've seen your contact information not even put up to date. And that's another thing, like, if you don't, like, those deployment briefings are so important because then you can make sure your information is correct, because service members just put the stupidest shit on there. I mean, I've
Mhm.
seen Walmart phone number, I've seen a mistress's phone number, I've seen I've seen some crazy things go on those. And as an FRG person, like, you're not allowed to talk to anyone that's not on the list. Like, if you are not the person authorized to get updates, where we're we've signed a contract saying like we won't like go against that. So it's just important. But but going to those briefings, you can learn about OBSEC, why it's important, why, what are different things about PERSEC that, show like, do you have a sticker on your car that says military spouse? Do you have a sticker, and I'm awful with this. Like I said on social media, I'm advertised as a military spouse on every platform I'm on. Like if they look me up, they know I'm a military spouse. But I take an effort to show that I'm like, I don't like, so say we go to a landmark place, I don't post that until we're outside of that. Like I won't
Yeah.
post that until later in the day or the next day. I won't post, anything crazy like that. So
And I think it genuinely also kind of depends on where you live. Like maybe now where you're living, it might not be great to be posting that you're a
Mhm.
military spouse, like having stickers because you're outside of the military community.
Yeah.
Where I feel like if you're inside, like right now where I'm at here at Fort Huachuca, where we are completely surrounded almost entirely by military veterans or border patrol at this point, but not the same because everybody in the community kind of
Mhm.
is that same person.
Mhm.
So you're not really putting a target on your back. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, Midwest, where there's no
Yeah.
bases, and you have an Army wife sticker, there's going to be some extremist possibly in that area who's like, "Ooh, I don't see Army wives every day. I don't like Army or
Yeah.
whatever." And that puts a target on your back so much more. Like I know if you're living on base, it's probably not as
Well,
relevant.
and I guess like be aware of your surroundings. I mean, I feel like that is just something that everyone should just be doing in general. I mean, most installations, we've talked about this, are just not in the greatest areas, like high crime rates, all that kind of stuff. Like you should always just be aware of your surroundings. So I mean, like wear your pride, like wear like Proud Army Wife shirt, like go for it. Don't let anyone yuck your yum. Like if that's
Right.
something that you're really all into, go for it. I've seen some of the cutest mil spouse shirts, and I'm like, I want that. Like
Well, we wear our deployed love
I wear
shirts,
my deployed shirt
all
all
the
the
time.
time. Yeah. I actually have a military, it says Mil Spouse book club on it. Like, I mean, unless you don't know the abbreviation, like whatever, but, always just be aware of your surroundings. Like, make sure you stay away from the areas that you shouldn't go to by yourself. If you're gonna, like, especially during a deployment, say, hey, bestie, I'm running to Walmart. Cool, bestie. Let me know when you get home. I do that all the time. I do that with my friend who lives in Texas saying, hey, I'm going out tonight. I will text you when I get home. So I have at least one person knows that I'm not home safely in my bed. And I think that's a great thing. Like we've had a secret code since we were like teenagers. Like get home safely. We have a code so she knows it's me, all that kind of stuff. And so I've always done that. Like especially when Jeremy is gone, I've always been like, hey, safely home from work. Like when I was working, Jeremy was deployed and I was going home to an empty house. I would text my mom because my mom lived in the same town as us when we first were stationed. And I was like, hey, I'm home from work. Just so she would know that I got home safely because I was working bartending. So I wasn't getting home until 1 a.m. or
Yeah.
something. That way she would know like, hey, I got home. So she wouldn't like wake up and be like, hey, I didn't get a text message. Like, did you make it home type of thing? Because like I said, most places where military installations are not the safest.
No.
It's just the
At least
unfortunate
areas of it aren't, yeah.
well, and that's just because it's a transit town, most places that they have it, I mean, Fort Liberty, like,
Affordable housing, it attracts
it
not
just
the greatest
it
crowd.
is. And, any places that have a large population too is going to have that crime rate. And so you just have to take the steps to be safe, whether that is concealed carry, going to concealed carry classes and, or,
Self-defense class, yeah.
yeah, or a defense class or anything like that. I have a rule with my kids. We're in a parking lot. Y'all aren't allowed to talk to me. Like, we're not
Your
asking me
attention.
questions. We're not asking, Mom, can we do this when we get inside? Like, you have to wait until we are physically inside the car or the building before you can ask all the questions because Mom is watching around me just to make sure that there's no sketchy people because even if you're not a military spouse, there are just sketchy people out there trying to get people. And so do my kids listen to that rule? Not all the time, but I just have to be like, we're in a parking lot and they're like, oh yeah, right, Mom. And so especially when like I'm already flustered.
Yeah.
So
So with the current, like the most recent climate, we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but the TikTok ban. So my biggest concern was, yes, the government or whoever thinks that TikTok is spying, and the reality is Meta is also spying on us.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
just the
exactly.
it's the public. When you're in public, you are in public, and it's the same with like if you're in public, you can be recorded because that's when you're in public, you don't have the right to being private, right?
Mhm.
So you by joining TikTok, by joining these things, are already putting yourself out there, knowing that you are in the
Right.
public. That's just part of what it is. But my biggest concern was, hey, we're concerned about TikTok, which is maybe Chinese, whatever at this point, I don't know. But then everybody, when they were freaking out about it being banned, joined Red Note. And Red Note to me
It's
felt so
oh,
unsecure.
yeah. Well, and
And
my
as a
whole thing is
military spouse, it was like, I can't put my information
yeah.
over there and feel right about it.
Right. Well, and my whole thought was is TikTok has been down for so long that like if it was really truly a national security threat, like it wouldn't have taken them this long to like do
No.
something about it. And and it kind of raises the point because like I got in a huge argument with my husband about like this about last year because like he doesn't post anything on his social media other than stuff about himself. And I was just like, why? Like you don't post anything about the kids, you don't post anything about me, and it's really frustrating because like, all your buddies do it. And I was just like, like, are you embarrassed? Like, what's the problem? He was like, no, it's just like, I just don't want to air my stuff out on social media to other people. I'm like, I don't want them to know things about me. And I'm like, but they know that you have a motorcycle. They know that you shoot guns. They know that means they know that you have guns. So like, you're kind of contradicting yourself. Like, I get it. I see what you're saying. But at the same time, like there are steps that you can take to minimize your profile. Like you can set your profile to private. You can, all this other kind of stuff. So I think I feel like anytime you go to social media, like whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any social media, I mean, even Discord, your information is out there. And if someone truly wanted to get it, they're going to get it. And my whole thought process is like, okay, cool. They want to know that I like books. Let them freaking go look at it. Like I was like, if they're truly going to target military, like if they wanted to target, like they're targeting more than one person. Like but I mean, I feel like this is like totally like off the subject, like China. Like if China was getting our information about anything like that, it's just not going to be me that they're going to target. Like little old Ashley.
Like, what do I have? Yeah.
Right. Like, so I mean, I feel like it's again, like, it's just you have to take everything that you read, you write, you post, other people post, and you have to look at it and do your own research and take it with a grain of salt. And and take it for what it is. Like, don't believe everything you see or read.
No, because the climate of the way social media is currently is so heavy on either side of the like political world that nothing on either side is probably entirely true, because at this point everybody's just making up things to piss the other side off. And
exactly.
It's like,
and it really
you have to just
it really
think
is.
about it.
I was telling someone the other day, I was like, why can't we go back to the MySpace days where social media was just there for the fun of it? Like, we spend time decorating our background and picking the music that was vibing for us that week. And, I mean, the biggest issue with that was, if you changed your top 10 friends, like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, that was like the extent of it. Like, I don't know. It has the generational thing or anything like that, but like the amount of like, I wish I could personally go off of all social media.
Me too, but that's my job.
It's my job for my work. It's the job for Deployed Love. It's how we share information. But like, I get so disheartened because it's just so negative. And I get like, I don't get it, but people like, I'm just like, if I see something I don't agree, I just scroll by, like, but like, I get that people use it as a platform to share their beliefs and stuff like that, but like at the same time, you don't have to be hateful to someone who doesn't believe you, because that's what's great about our country specifically is we have the right to believe what we want to believe and respect what other people believe. But
I honestly think that as a social media manager, because that's what I do, like I spend less time on social media than most people do.
Yeah.
Because I get on and my mom's like, oh, you're on it all the time. I'm like, no, I'm posting. I know I have to post certain things at certain times, but I hate scrolling. Yeah. Like specifically since the TikTok ban, I have not spent any time on TikTok because I'm just like, I don't want to see what everybody's opinions on the ban are. I don't want to see everyone's opinion on the inauguration. I don't want to see it because I have my own opinions and I'm fine with it. I'm fine with where I am.
Yeah.
Just don't read it.
Like, you know, like, and I don't air my political beliefs online. I don't do political stuff online because that's my opinion. And if it's something I'm truly passionate about, I'm going to go through the right avenues to make sure the things that I want changed. For instance, like signing a petition, you know, sharing information, like, you know, like I'll share information like when it comes to like military families, like, you know, we have our, you know, our previous podcast, like our podcast that comes out before this one is really important to military families. And yes, it's a little political. Like there's definitely, you know, some stuff that, you know, we have to take a stand on, but like, but I'm also going to not say if the opposite person came over to me and gave me a solid argument, I'm going to be like, you make some valid points. But at the same time, let me give you some valid points on this and why this affects military families in a really negative way. And I'm always love to like have conversations with people who have different beliefs as long as they're respectful and they're not
I
gonna.
think especially being part of the nonprofit sector, because that's
Yep.
part of our job is we
Yep.
can't be
Yep.
political. That's kind of a law. But I just think that there's so many different people. We see that as military spouses specifically.
Yeah.
We work and we deal with people who have so many different thoughts, have different opinions, grew up differently, they see things so differently. And it's just like, I will never judge a friend on their political standing. Honestly, I wish we could go back to like the 90s when it was like taboo to tell people what your political standing was. I really wish we could go back to that, because it's like,
I mean,
I don't want your politics in my face. I want to just know you as a human. And can we just go back to connecting as humans? And that's what I think social media is kind of killing that lately.
Yeah.
I get on there because I want to see Ashley's pictures of her kids doing scouts. I want to see my sisters going on adventures. I don't want to get on there and see everything else that's posted.
Well, and it's just like it's one of those things where, like, you know, especially because like right now you see so much hate. That's just why I don't do it, because that has nothing to do with my religion. Like if you genuinely think that about me, then you would know that from knowing me, like not because of who I voted for. So, you know, the only time I ever air anything political if it affects military families as a whole, and that's the only time you'll ever see me post anything about. I feel people are more inclined to just be like, okay, let me get my keyboard and just go on and just keep saying stuff and argue for the sake of arguing. Like the amount of times, because there's like one, like there's just like that. It's not anonymous, but because you can see profile, but like you don't know that person personally. Like if we got an agreement, I would be so like upset about something because you're my friend and I respect your opinion and I respect our relationship. But like people who don't know, people don't have that line that they don't care to cross. Like they're like, there's no line. I'm going to just say whatever the hell I want to. And I think that social media, like, you know, we saw it a lot on, like, I never really did Twitter because I felt like that was like,
it's not my thing.
Like it wasn't my thing, but I feel like that was kind of the start of it because people could just be like, that's dumb type of thing. And to me, that blows my mind because like, why go out of your way to be mean? Why go out of your way to make someone feel bad about their beliefs because you don't agree? Like that's what our country is based off of. Like we all came to the US because we didn't agree with where we came from, with what was happening. And we wanted to start a life where we weren't restricted by those beliefs. We could come together and build a country on top of that. And I feel like we've gotten so far away with it. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media. I think it has a lot to do with what the news tells us that's not true. It's not the complete story. And people don't take the time to find out the whole story. What happened before that happened? What happened afterwards? What led up to those events? What led up to, you know, this news station said this is what that person's doing. Okay, go read the actual, like,
or go watch the whole video, not just the clip they showed you.
The bill. Go read the legislation. Go read, you know, do research on like the actual topic before you become a keyboard warrior. Because, like, you know, I've 100% have like looked at something and be like, oh my god, I cannot believe they're gonna do that. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
this is a 30-second clip that I'm watching. There has to be more to this story. Like, there has to be. So I go to my computer, I go to my phone, and I look up more than one article or more than one resource and be like, okay, well, that's not what that says. That's not what they said. This is what they said. And, you know, but again, I don't go and respond. Like, if I do it for my benefit and I know what in the know of what I need to know. and how it'll affect me and my family.
Yeah.
Um,
But talking about the the warriors kind of full circles back to where we kind of started in our like the groups on Facebook from
mhm.
military spouses and just the bullying.
I just don't understand how a group of people who are so connected on so many levels can just be so hateful, and it makes me mad because then it puts all of us military spouses into this category of being like bitchy and catty. And I mean, obviously I've met people like that because there's going to be people like that. But then when people think of military spouses, that's all they think about. They don't think about the kind, hardworking, sweet spouses who are out there trying to make a difference, who are trying to have a career, who are trying to just freaking survive this crazy lifestyle that we live in.
And I think, like we've talked about, it is the younger spouses. That's how they connect to other military spouses. That's the only way they've known how.
Yep.
When we joined, Facebook wasn't. I mean, it was
Yep.
around, but it wasn't the way it
It
is.
really wasn't. I
And
mean, it was for college students when we became military spouses. Like, you
yeah,
could only have Facebook if you were enrolled in a university. And that was how it was until I think it was like a few years.
so these
Um,
young spouses don't get the experience of coming out to a big FRG events and coming out and meeting the spouses in person, right? So they get to this point where they're just like, well, this is the only way I've known any military spouses, so now I'm not connecting with military spouses.
well, and it breaks my heart when I see these messages on all these different platforms. And some platforms are better. Like, there's one group where I'm like, I love a group, but it's a bookish based military spouse group. The Bookish Mil Spouse, by far one of my favorite book military spouse support groups. But we all come together for not only being a military spouse, but our love of books. And I love the community that's in there because it's so uplifting. Like, rarely will you see anyone who is just blatantly out like, you like that author, like, ew. Like, I think I saw one person post where they're like, I'm no longer supporting these authors because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, that's great. Like, if you don't want to support them, that's great. But like, at the same time, like, no one responded why. Like, I think the most people are like, well, why? Can you give us a reason why you don't like them? No one was just like, well, that's stupid. Like, no one did that. No one said like, you're stupid for doing that. And it was really nice to have a community where people are just not like belittling and degrading just for the I feel like it's just for the fun of it. Like, I feel like there are Facebook groups out there who that is really the sole group of that group.
Oh, I know. I
Why?
never want to join those because I don't want to hear the mean things. They could be about me. I don't know. In some of the communities that we've been part of, I'm pretty
I
big
think
in
it
the
has to
circles. And it's like,
exactly.
I don't want to
Well,
know what people are
and it's
saying
one of
about
those
me.
things. Yeah, I don't want to know him either. I mean, because I definitely have gotten like a little butthurt about like some rude comments about like, oh, you're a typical dependent. But like, when you truly look at a military spouse, like if you truly look at the amount of, yeah, there are spouses out there who are stay-at-home moms who don't work. They don't do anything. Number one, it's really hard to work as a military spouse. Like, I don't like Jeremy gave me like, we had this conversation last year, and because he said something, I was like, let's break this down. Let's break this down. And let's explain why it's so hard for me to have a career. Yeah, I could have easily done that, but we could have potentially been apart. We could have been paying out the yin yang for childcare.
Childcare.
I was like, I got fired from a job because of you. And he's like, no, you. And I was like, yes, I did. I got fired from that job because you can never take off to take care of our kids when they're sick or to go to the doctor's appointments or do anything. I was like, it is always me. So, yes, I think that like, this is why my career has been all over the place. And and that's a lot for a lot of military spouses. Now, granted, if you don't have kids or if you're in a different stage where you have older kids and it's easier to do a job where because your kids can come home by themselves after school. Every journey is different. Every journey is different. And so if you're a stay-at-home mama, good for you. I'm so happy you get to stay home with those babies. If you're a working mom, even more props to you because you are taking on the roles of other two parents and working full-time and still making sure those babies are taken care of. And if you're not if you're just a spouse who doesn't have kids, who's working or not working, good for you. Take this opportunity because in the long scheme of things, military life is short. It's not that long. Unless your spouse is planning to be in for 35, 40 years, it's not that long of a time frame. And so you may like, that's what I told Jamie. I was like, I have no problem working every single day when you get out, and you can stay home. You can take the kids to practice. You can go do the grocery shopping. You can make sure the bills are paid. You can make sure the house is clean. You can make sure all the kids' homework's done. And he's like, okay. And I was like, cool. Like, that's the plan. You do 20 years, I'll do 20 years or whatever. If you want to work, you can work. It doesn't matter to me, because we've had those conversations. But having people go on the internet and say, like, she's just there for the money, she's just there for the insurance, please. We like it's not, that's not why.
Not worth it.
That's not why.
That's not what we're here
I
for.
will not be putting myself through 15 years of chaos and heartache and all of, like, I had dreams of being all these different things. And I knew that if I wanted to do those, I couldn't be, I mean, I could have been married to a service member, but like, I'd be driving an hour away. I'd be living remote. I'd be living apart.
It wouldn't look the same.
It wouldn't look the same. So making these choices, and I feel like, why tear down someone for their choice? Like, if your husband has no problem with you staying home because you had those conversations, don't let anyone else make you feel bad for it. You want to wear that proud military wife shirt, you do you. If you don't want to have anything to do with anyone in the military because for whatever reason, good for you. Just make sure you're plugged in some way so you can get the information when you need it, whether that's through your unit, through another organization, through us, because I feel like that's why we chose, like, that's why we expanded Deployed Love, because we wanted to have that safe space. And we wanted to have a space where people could come and not feel judged because of their husband's rank, their job, where they're from, what their religion was. It is a open door. I don't even think I usually only ask people like what unit their husband's in, just so I can be like, oh, okay, that person potentially will be deployed, or they're deployed, because usually if you're at a base, you kind of know who is who. But like, I don't ask like rank. I don't ask. I think it took forever for Hannah to tell us that she was Jewish, because she was terrified to tell us that she was of a different religion that some people view differently. And I was like, wait, that's so cool. Tell me more about your religion, because I knew nothing about it. And I think that's an amazing thing about being a military family, is that you can learn so, like, the things I've learned, and like meals and traditions and all these different things that I have learned from other military families. Like, I've never set foot in Africa. Never set foot. But the culture that I've learned from other military spouses, and the food that I've gotten to taste from them, from those individuals, I'm like, oh, like, I feel like I've gotten to experience that, even though I maybe never gotten to experience that before. And so being able to connect with spouses or even service members who are in the military, because we are the true melting pot, like the epitome of the melting pot. You have people from all over the world, all over the United States. And like, I think I saw something the other day. I follow a group of British guys on TikTok, and they are traveling in the US right now. And they're just like, this is blowing our mind, because like the US is like a bunch of different countries. And we've talked about this before, I think, a bunch of different countries within one country. And it's true, because like, you have different cultures, you have different traditions, you have different dialect, you have all these different things all within our country. And you can learn about that, like, and utilize that and share that. So I don't know, I feel like find that not silver lining, but choose to be good, choose to find the good in things, and not worry about what people are saying on social media, because again, they're just saying it because they don't have that line to stop them. Like,
yeah, I think it's
say that to your face. No,
believe in who you are and what you already believe, and don't worry about everybody's opinion online, because maybe someone doesn't like you, but that's not your business. I think that in reality, like, what people think about you is not your business.
I think that took so long for me to learn, because like, I'm definitely a people pleaser. Like, I definitely want people to like me. I definitely want people to see me as like a positive person, someone who is there. And so like, I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's fine. Yeah, am I going to be upset about someone talking bad about me? Yeah, probably. But like, now that I'm in my mid-30s, I'm like, okay, she don't like me. Oh, well. I mean, I think I always get upset when that person doesn't take the time to get to know me, like if they've only had like one encounter. And I feel like that's the thing, like, don't like, the saying, don't judge a book by their cover. Like, you want to, like, you need to, like, get to know them a little bit better before you make the decision. But I don't know. I just, yeah,
It's
you
an
have to stay true
interesting
to
world.
you.
We live in a really interesting world with social
Yes.
media, and I think drastically over the next 4 or 5 years, that's
I
gonna
think it's
change
going
a
to
lot.
change. I think, well,
Um,
and it changes it does every 4-ish years, every decade, it changes. And so not only is our life as military family changes because of policy, war, things like that, like all that kind of changes, but like how things go out and all it will change. And so we'll see. I'm just like, one of those people where like I would you want your mom to know about all the stuff that you're posting on social media? Like, how would your parent, like, I'm like, if I go say something, I'm like, ooh, if my mom saw that, she would whip my butt. And I'm 35 years old. Like, do I want to write that, type of thing? And so, keeping,
there's a lot of
I
times
just,
I would say
there's no
agreeing
harm
with
just
that is
to keep scrolling.
there's a lot of times where something will get me heated, and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna write about this," and then
Mhm.
I start to write, and I'm like, "Nah,
Yeah,
no,
I do the
who
same thing.
really cares? Like, nobody
I,
does."
I did that yesterday because I was just like, someone posted something and I was like, you 100% took that out of context. Like, that is not what that person said. That is not what they meant. That is out of context. And this is exactly why we have this, like, I hate when people like try to change the narrative of something, because that is why we have the hysteria that I feel like is a huge trend right now. And I'm just like, for the love of God, like, like the other day I went and I had articles pulled up. I had all this information to be like, you're wrong. Here's the correct information. And I was like, no, you know what? This isn't worth my time. Like, why did I spend this much time
Someone
to
else will
try to
do it.
change
Someone
their
else will have that
mindset?
conversation.
Well, and I was just like, I don't know this person. Like, why am I going to sit here and be like, you're wrong? Because you know what? Like, if you are going to take the time to try to belittle someone, I'm not going to take the time to kind of like belittle you.
Yeah.
It's not worth my time. So that's why I was like, just scroll. Like, unless like someone's harming a child, that's probably the only time I ever respond on anything. Like, if I see a video where a kid is not properly in a car seat, I'm like, hey, unless like I see a bunch of other people comment, they're like, all right, someone's already said it. But
Yeah.
like, that child was not even in a car seat and they're 2 years old. Like, that's like the only time I've ever like gotten to the point where I'm like, that's not okay. You should be ashamed of yourself. Only time that I've probably have ever posted something like that on social media. I mean, I've I had a horrible, horrible instance with a photographer in Texas, and it got all the way. So I made a post about like, hey, like this person, just FYI, like this person I don't is potentially scamming people because like I paid this money and she ghosted and all this other kind of stuff. It went all the way up to a news station. And because we were a military family, it got like a lot of traction. And they came out, and I should have said no to this article thing, but I think I was just so like upset about it because I was just like, I'm a really grace, like I give a lot of grace to people. Like if you say, hey, like, I'm so sorry, my computer died, you know, like if I have to reach out to you and you give me an excuse, I'm a little like upset about it. But if a person says, hey, I know I owe you these photos, my computer died, it's at Best Buy, cool, great. So I had reached out to her because I was like, hey, like you said that the photos would be ready in 2 weeks, it's 3 weeks because I always give a grace period, just wondering when they're coming. No response, send another message, and then, oh, my computer broke, blah blah blah. I was like, okay, cool, keep me up to date. A couple of weeks went by, nothing. And then she just ghosted, like she stopped responding. And I was like, I paid for these, like I paid for these photos, I was really excited for these photos. It was our first family photo as a family of 4. And so, I posted on like the local group saying like, hey, like, actually no, someone else had posted that she got ghosted, and I said, hey, same thing, we got ghosted too, and like, really upset, da 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 da. And someone was like, oh, and then like they saw, like, I don't know why I mentioned military or something, there was a reason why. And yeah, it went all the way up, and then the news station changed, like they clipped it to change my words and made me out to be like this person who was really upset about like not getting photos. And I was like, I did not say that. I said that, if like, hey, like, it just would be nice for someone to communicate and be open and honest about it. Like, I understand shit happens. I'm a mom, I'm a working mom. all these other things. And they made it out to think that I thought this person was targeting us because we're a military family. I was like, that is not what I said. So like, it's a great example to show that the media and Facebook and all these social media apps can change the narrative of what you're saying, and it's not true. So I instantly, like, as soon as I saw that, I was commenting. I was like, that is not what I said. I'm so disappointed in how this was, edited. I was like, I do not want anyone to go be mean to her or anything like that. Like, she is a person. All this kind of stuff. I only had sent the thing out to warn other people because I knew there were at least 4 other families who were scheduled to do photos with her from the post that she had posted on the Facebook page. So I was like, hey, just let you guys know, like, she's ghosted me. She hasn't sent me photos, things like that. And so it's one of those things where, like, you have to take everything that you see nowadays, where I feel like 20 years ago I saw something and be like, okay, yeah, that's probably true. Like, that's probably true. Nowadays I'm like, I feel like I question everything, and it really sucks that we have to question everything that is presented to us.
But that's part of being like social media, like knowing social media and the way it runs.
Yeah. But oh goodness. Yeah. So yeah, just keep in mind, be open-minded, be self-aware of yourself online. Stay true to yourself. I love how you said that. Stay true to you. Don't let someone change I guess, like, you can let someone change your, like, viewpoint if it's, like, done in a very healthy, constructive way, because, like, we all grow up with stuff instilled to us by our parents. And I know there's a lot of things that my parents and my grandparents believed in that I do not agree with. And I believe in something different. And so, but I learned that through conversations with other people.
See, that's where I think saying
adult conversations.
Less following social media, less scrolling and reading everything everybody says, and go out and have conversations with real humans. And let that be what changes you, not some article that you read that you're like, oh yeah, now I think that's right. Don't do that. Like, learn why you should do that. Research it. Talk to actual humans, and then yes, change your perspective if it is something that does affect you in a way that you didn't realize.
Right, and like take like actual steps that actually are going to matter. If something you're super passionate about, like, take those steps to go and sign a petition, or take those steps to email your Congress member or whatever, or your Senate member. Don't just post that you're angry about it on social media. That does absolutely fucking nothing. I'm sorry. It does nothing. It does nothing other than it does
somebody else mad.
Like, if you genuinely don't like something, you don't like the people who are running. Support other people that you think would be a better person to run yourself. Take the time to do these things if you genuinely want to see change. Don't just sit behind a computer screen and rant and rave over something that you want to change, but you're actually doing nothing to actually make the change. And that's where, like, like I said, I do mostly military, like, policies. Like, that's really the only thing that I follow, because it will take an effect personally to me. Like, it will change how things happen for me and my family, for moving, housing costs, food costs, all those things, like, have a direct effect to me. And so those are the things that I am going to try. So, like, yeah, I'm going to follow the senator or the congressperson who is doing this bill and be like, hey, you guys should read this. Like, take a moment and read this. And, that's why we had the podcast. We wanted to share resources, and we wanted to share things that were happening in the military community so people are more aware. Our podcast that happened, if you haven't listened to our podcast last week, go listen to it. That is something that is affecting military families now into future, possibly, that we want to make sure that is out there. And yeah, it's a little political. It's a little messy. It's a little, what's the word? Sus? Is that the word? Is that how you use it?
Yeah,
it's one of the things where, like, there's some muddy water in there, and it is definitely something that is going to affect us. And so, yeah, I was like, I cannot believe this. Like, I didn't even hear about it until I started having the conversation with our guest. And so, and I didn't even know about the freaking, have you seen all this stuff on TRICARE West?
No.
Like, there's so many things out there that affect us that we don't know about, because I feel like social media just muddles everything down, and we just see the negative parts. And so I want to get back to it being like a way to communicate in a positive light, and a way to share things that should be shared and discussed and things like that. So utilize social media in the way that you want to. I was actually excited that TikTok got banned.
I was ready. I was like, oh,
I,
so much less work now.
well, I was upset because I was like, this is where everyone was, and we had started to build up the TikTok account for Deployed Love and for the podcast. I utilize it on a personal level just to kind of share my love of reading, but like at the same time, like I don't utilize it enough to like where it would really affect me. I could just go to Instagram or another platform. But I spend so much time just mindlessly scrolling through it that I was like, this is great. Like this gives me a reason to not do that.
No,
Like
I
obviously I
definitely
can
took that
delete it.
as a reset for me. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't need it. When it was gone for those 16 hours, I was like, oh, I didn't even reach
Yep.
for that app. I put it in a different folder and just didn't even think about it.
Yep.
Almost deleted it, but I was like, I can't. We have
And
too much
the only reason I had it was for business purposes, for the
Yeah.
coaster, for Deployed Love, for Rock Up Buttercup, because that was where everyone is. Like that is the new platform. When we were young adults, it was Facebook. Then it was Instagram. Now it's TikTok. So it was one of the things where like it was a need. And that's what I told Jeremy, because Jeremy's like, I don't really like that you have TikTok on your account. And I was like, I mean, I get it, but like at the same time, as a business owner, this is where everyone is. This is where everyone is to look for, like, that's where they're doing their research. That's where, like, and I can't say that I didn't do it either. Like, when we were planning our trip to DC, I was scrolling DC videos. Like, where should we go? Where should we go eat? What should we do? And I was 100% utilizing it that way. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, well, like, it's just another app. Like, to me, it's another app. We've seen so many apps come through our generation. I mean, because we grew up, like, we've grown with it, that, like, to me, it's just another app. I could see the younger generations being, like, extremely distraught over this because that is their app.
It has also become a resource.
Yes.
Where, like you were saying, it is so much more than what it was.
It's so
It
much
started
more
out
than
as dancing and nonsense.
Yeah.
But so many people post so much educational stuff.
Yep.
Like I was trying to explain it to my dad, and he was just like, and he's the same way about podcasts. He's like, oh, it's just people's opinions. And I'm like, kind of, but no. I was like, there's so many podcasts and so many TikTok channels that literally are scientists. I mean, they're coming on there and they're explaining how things
And
work. It's educational as well.
educational, you know, that was the only reason I was kind of bummed about TikTok going, was because I had started doing like sourdough bread and I was finding all these amazing recipes on there. Yeah, I could go back to Pinterest, I could go back to Google, things like that, but I liked getting like a personal recommendation of like, hey, this is my favorite recipe because of X, Y, and Z. Because, you know, before I went through TikTok, I was pulling recipes off and trying them, and I'm like, these are not working the way I need to work it. Let me go see what other people are saying about it.
And I think it's because I'm a very visual person, so I enjoy like seeing that as it's happening. Or, you know, yeah, I can get on YouTube, but do I want to watch 40-minute video on how to do this, or do I want the short version of how I can just get through the process?
What I liked about TikTok was because I could find a short version of something, and then if I like that content, or if I connected with that content creator, I go over to YouTube. And I've done that. Like, you know, there's a couple people who I follow who also post like longer segments of their stuff over on YouTube, and I started utilizing YouTube a little bit more, going like, oh, you know what, I want to listen to more about what they're saying about this book, or more about this, or how to like do this or make this and things like that. And so, but I feel like it's so much easier to navigate and search on TikTok than it is over on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because like if you type in, like if I just type in sourdough, like what was I was trying to look up something on, let's talk about this, hairstyles. So I was trying to look up cute little girl hairstyles, short, because my daughter decided to chop a chunk out of her hair and she looks ridiculous, y'all. And I was like, well, let me go see if I can find some images of maybe a really cute short hairstyle that would work with her super fine hair. It won't work that way, but you know, I did Google. It showed me a bunch of AI photos, and like the same photos over and over and over again. I went to Instagram. Apparently no one tagged anything for that on Instagram. Went to TikTok, and I found a few more, like I found more options. I always find more options that is geared towards exactly what I'm looking for on TikTok. And so I've personally used that for research in the past. Like if I wanted to research how to bookbind, I went to TikTok first. Anytime we go on a trip, I'm going to TikTok first because it has the most up-to-date information, in my opinion.
And just, I think it's easier to navigate information.
Yeah.
Because like you're talking about recipes, and the biggest thing, I hate Google anymore for that, because every one you click, you have to read a book before you even can find a recipe.
And like you said, I'm a visual person too, so I tend to kind of retain the knowledge if I can physically see it. Whereas if I'm reading like an article, I'm like having to write it down, and then I'm having to like Google
A
each one to
screenshot,
find
yeah.
out like what it is. And so like, you know, I have my trip to DC again in April, and you know, I'm going to a different section of DC, so we're going to be like I'm going to be a little bit further up. So I was like looking up like what are some good locations to eat around that area. Like, are we going to have to travel further to go find a really good place to eat, or is there any other activities in that area that we can go do other than the hotel? And you know, I was able to find quite a few videos on TikTok that showed this is where we would recommend eating. This is where, you know, this is how much it would be. This is a cheaper option. But if I went to Instagram or Facebook, I didn't find anything because so Instagram is so hard for me to like research on, like, because it takes a tag, and then like I think it sometimes tags, because like I think TikTok, like even if you don't tag like DC, but if you say the word in the video, it automatically will pull it up. And so whereas in Instagram, if it's not tagged that way, it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how things are going to go in the next few years in terms of social media and the way that the media will start, how the media portrays information. Because I feel like there's been a lot of pitting against people, and I feel like people, when they see it being allowed on like the news stations and things like that, they feel like it's acceptable to do on social media as well. And so I'm hoping that people kind of just take a step back and be like, we need to support each other, and we need to support, especially military spouses. Like, I just hope that you guys can continue to uplift each other and cheer each other on, whether there are milestones or, you know, like, don't tell a spouse is stupid for staying with her husband for whatever reason. Like, give solid advice. Like, hey, like, so sorry you're going through this. Here's some recommendations of resources, like the chaplain. This is a great resource at this base. All that kind of stuff. Like, be more kind. Like,
Yeah,
be
and
more
just realize
more.
we're all fighting the same fight. Our
Exactly.
husbands and wives are all doing the same, we all have the same
We,
mission, right? We all have it. So, like, we have so much in common, and just treasure that commonness and
yeah.
learn from it.
Yeah, like we can talk about how we're all different and our journeys are all different, but down to the roots, we all have things that are common, whether it's at a different time in our life, it hasn't happened to us yet, we will eventually have something, at least one thing in common with the person that you're talking to. And just remember, the person you're talking to, the person that you're degrading, the person that you're uplifting, whoever it is a human being. They have emotions. They have things, like, you know, just like just
Just treat
be
them that way.
treat them how I always do it, is like I treat people how I want to be treated. If it's something I don't agree with, I just be like, I agree to disagree. Respectfully, I agree to disagree. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you if we can do it in a respectful adult manner. But if that's not something that we can do, then that's not something we're gonna have a conversation about, which is one of the reasons why I never talk about anything political or anything like that, because I just feel that that is just not something. I don't even talk politics with my family.
It just kind of
So
isolates you. It really does.
it's my opinion. Like, you know, I love my family, but some of my family is very, 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 very vocal about the things that they don't agree with. And there's things there are definitely things that I don't agree with, but I don't go over to there's things and be like, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself. We are no longer family. Da 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 da. I
Just scroll
I
past.
just kind of like pull myself back, and I'm like, you know, I don't agree with that. They don't agree with my lifestyle, because, you know, a lot of them, I have a lot of family members who don't believe in the military. And I have a lot of families who are gun ho, like hoorah, like military are like the best people. Like, you should support them. I should do all the things. So it's like very opposite. And so, and even like the extreme ones, I'm kind of just like, let's tone it down just a little bit,
Chill out.
because
It is just technically a job. Like, chill
it's really,
out.
I mean, it is. I mean, granted, like, I do think that the military deserves the respect that they get. They
Yes.
deserve. I do think that if you are going to say bad things about the military, I will 100% be the first person to say that's not okay. You get to say those things because they're doing their job. You can sit in that cushy office because of them.
I think military is the one stopping point for
Yeah.
me. I've definitely deleted people from my social media if they started bashing military. I'm like, nah,
I
we're not playing. I'm not even interested.
I've unfollowed family so I don't see them, because there's one point where I've had family members who were bashing, and I just wanted to be going like, you do realize that this person, and my husband are all active service members right now and are also there right now, and you are,
Yeah.
like, I get it. You don't believe in it. Cool. But your stance on it, like, pretty much we're like, all military people are baby killers. And I'm just like, I'm going to knock your ass out. Like, that's a hard stop for me. And that's probably the only, like, again, anything with military families is probably my one, like, hard stop. Because, yeah, there's going to be bad apples, but there's bad apples in every job. Corporate, anything like that, you're going to have them. And so you can't let the bad apples define the really good people out there that are in the military. I mean, I've known some of the most amazing humans who are service members, like the most amazing. And then they go on to continue to do amazing work outside of the community. And so I'm like, there's like, I feel like removing, like you said, I've unfollowed. I never refriended some people when I had to get my new account when I was hacked a few years ago. And I just don't comment on things from those family members. I'm just kind of like, cool. Like, we definitely have grown because, you know, we are all growing. We're all learning new things. We're all learning things like that. That is if that's your belief, that's your belief. I don't have to insert myself into that conversation to make myself feel better, because I know what my beliefs are. I know what my values are. I know what my family, my family, my husband, my children, what is affecting us and what we can do and how that can help affect us. Like, I'm sure there's people who go through things that don't affect me. I understand that there's things that don't affect me at all that are a problem, but I can't really do anything about it unless I go and do it in a proper channel. So yeah, I do that. I do that by signing petitions. I do that by, you know, if I do see an interesting article about something that I know another friend is really going to enjoy reading, I share that with them. But I don't go out of my way saying like, you're wrong, I'm right. And I think that mentality has to change, because I feel like every side, no matter what is the conversation, has valid points. I can see valid points from the opposite side of things that I don't necessarily believe in. But at the same time, my points are just as valid as theirs. And so you have to make the best choice of what is best for you and your family. And that's all that we can ask for the people within the US, because I mean, we all have different values. We all have different beliefs and all that kind of thing. So because we're such a melting pot, there's always going to be that divide. But I feel like there just has to be a healthier way for us to have those conversations. And I don't think social media and the news media have showcased a positive way to do that. We always just see the negative side. Like, we always see the hate versus the hate. We never see the, hey, we never see the conversation. Like, you make a valid point. Like, you make a valid point on that.
Yeah.
And the other person going, you made a valid point on this one, but I can't get behind this point and this point. And so I think having those conversations, like, you know, I get like people are probably going to say like, well, having those conversations are important, but I choose for myself not to have those conversations because of my positions in the companies that I work for, because I don't want my opinion to affect the organizations that I work for. I don't want my opinions to affect how people feel about themselves. So I keep those to myself. And you may not agree with that. But I hope that anyone who's listening can take a moment to think about, you know, having those conversations about things and listening to the other party before like saying like, whatever you say, I don't care because you support this person, you're wrong no matter what. Or this is my opinion and this is the only opinion and that is the only thing. So I think social media plays a huge part in that. And until, I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think we're always going to have that. I think we'll have fluxes based off of how the news is reporting things, how the current government is reporting things. I think we're always going to have that divide. But each individual person has to take the steps to be like, do I want to be the person who's spreading hate? Or do I want to be the person who is actually making change in a positive light, so that way our future for our lives, our children, our grandchildren can be better. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
very political.
So for everybody who listened today, I hope that you kind of understand that we are all different. We all have different opinions, but also we need to be able to use social media in a way that isn't harming other people. So that's what I think
Yeah.
that comes down to, is harming other people by having opinions that are being rude to people,
Yes.
by putting out information that shouldn't be on the internet, simple things like that. So that's OPSEC, that's PERSEC, that's just being kind, I guess.
Yeah.
Just do the right thing, honestly. But I'm going to make sure that in the show notes for this one that we include, I know there's some really great links about OPSEC and PERSEC specifically, but there's also a lot of information out there about how to be safe on social media in general that may not be military related. So I'm going to make sure we
And like
research and put some
teaching
of
your
that.
children how to be like safe on the
Yeah.
internet, and you know, you can be targeted whether you're military or not. Like, you know, age, race, all that kind of stuff plays in a role. And so just having those conversations in the family of how can we as a family be safe on the internet? Like, how can we be safe? And I think that'll be great to share those resources.
Yep, we'll make sure that those are included this time so that you guys can get in there, and even if it's just for yourself, just researching and just having a better idea of how to use social media in a safe way, especially being military families, is really super important. So we'll have that all for you guys in the show notes, and then we'll catch you guys on the next podcast, and that's coming up soon. So it's nice to talk to you guys, and as we like to say, rock up, buttercup.
Bye, guys.